the seat bounce and the seat bounce index. Now we're going to try and explain it to you, the exact way of doing the seat bounce. Try to put it in a little bit of a format that can be followed and can be taught. We are once again fortunate to have Brian to show us how to do it. The seat bounce is probably one of my favorite maneuvers because you can get so much height in such a short amount of time, and I really enjoy it. I think it adds a lot to the riding. Give it a try. The seat bounce. Now we have spoken about the seat bounce before and its relevance in off-road riding. Now it's explained this time. Once again, we want to show you exactly how it's done, step for step. We've noted a lot of people have said, how is it done? Now Brian, can you put it in a simple way or simple form? First of all, the advantages of seat bounce and the steps coming up to it and how to do it properly.
Yeah, you know, the biggest thing for me with a seat bounce is when you're coming out of a tight corner and you've got to try and jump across a gap or you need to clear some obstacle. And that's the real time that I see value in it, you know. So it's when you don't have much space to get a proper run up like a motocross jump. In other words, you don't have time to stand in the correct position. So you're using a system where the bike is able to give you leverage to jump over a particular obstacle or a gap or a log or something like that. So what we're trying to do is really accelerate hard, hitting the face of the jump or whatever we're hitting, and letting the back suspension, you know, really driving your weight into the back suspension. So that we're compressing it so that the bike can actually propel itself and launch out a lot more than you would be if you were standing. You know?
100%. Now, you would definitely, well, I find in my riding, I get more height out of a seat bounce than I do in a standing with them. Is that because you're preloading the actual shock absorber properly?
Yeah, you know, I think it's definitely the combination of you're pushing all your weight into the suspension, you're preloading the suspension, and at exactly the same time you're hitting the gas really hard, and it absolutely propels the bike, you know, off the launching ramp or whatever you're launching off. So it really gives you a lot more lift and a lot more height than you would normally get if you were just standing.
100%. Now, my feeling on this is a lot of guys are scared to do it the first time or a couple of times because they think that the bike is going to hit them in the bum and throw them over the handlebars. That's a natural feeling. You know, in other words, they're not synchronized with the bike. How did you start doing a seat bounce, and how did you get that right in the beginning?
Well, like anything, you know, every time we talk about these things on the program, it's about practice, you know. So certainly don't go and try and jump the biggest canyon jump you can find.
Yeah.
You know, start small, just find a little mound or a little jump, and just start progressively and jump more and more and more. But the biggest thing is just to get your confidence up, and the way you can do that is to practice a lot, you know. So, really come up to the jump and try and keep your body in a central position. So once you hit the jump, obviously you're going to be leaning back a little bit to get the weight on the back wheel. But once you take off, pull your body forward into the neutral position, because you always want to be neutral when you're jumping in the air. Okay. And that's really the best way to practice is just to do it in small steps.
Now when you're coming up to, even say like a face, like we're going to be showing now, the face of a little jump or the face of a trench, do you clutch it just before you hit that jump? That's vitally important, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You know, I don't normally suggest that, because every time you pull the clutch and you're losing drive. So you want to try and leave the clutch as much as possible, but have your finger on it for in case. But in a situation like we're going to explain just now, you know, when you're coming into a very tight corner and you need to accelerate really high or really hard, and you need the revs up, and to really get that blip, to get it up in the air, you're going to need to clutch it a little bit. So obviously you need to read the terrain. So if it's very muddy or very slippery, obviously that's not going to work for you. But you know, you'll know the conditions of the day, and for sure you want to give it a little bit of a clutch, give it a bit more juice,
power,
and just propel and shoot it off the actual lip.
100%. Well, this actually works a lot for me when I ride. I use a lot of the seat bounce. Brian and I were talking earlier. Even just practicing riding in the veld, and I see a little bit of a mound or an ant mound, I just hit that and get used to it, so that when I come up to stuff, I use it in my riding a lot. What are the downsides of the seat jump?
You know, the downside to me in a seat jump is that you're sitting down. You know, and to me, you've got no control when you're sitting down. You know, you want to be standing and you want to be in control of the bike. So whenever you're standing on top of the bike, you're in control of the bike. When you sit in the bike is in control of you. So you're going along for the ride. But in a situation like this, we're actually using it to our advantage. So I wouldn't say that there's a downside to it, except for the fact that you're not quite as much in control as you would be had you been standing. But in a situation like we're going to explain now, you know, you would typically always want to hit you want to hit a jump like this straight.
Yes.
But in a situation like this, we don't have as much space as we would have had. So
it's off camber, yeah.
You know, we're dealing with what we've got at the time. You know, the course or the track, and on this particular situation, does turn very sharp right, and then we do have to jump a trench. So, you know, we're using it to our advantage. In the perfect world, we would have gone much wider and gone a much straighter line, stood up before the jump, stood in a central position, you know, hit the jump on the gas and jumped across the ditch. But, you know, there's not always the perfect world in racing and in riding in the bush.
Perfect. All right, so we're going to go through it step for step. Watch carefully his body positioning, and I also think, well, in this specific instance, the clutch work. All right, Brian. I really, really enjoy the seat mounts. One of my favorite moves. It looks so graceful, and it just looks like you've got that motorbike in control. Now, when you see Brian coming up to this corner, what we haven't really spoke about is, did you see that? His finger was on the clutch. And we had spoken about it earlier, but it almost gives him that little bit of an explosive shootout right there. And his body will lift, and now, as you can see that, his legs extend to give it an extra bit of height. So he's going up to there, clutch just touched, an accelerator, almost a whoop type of maneuver, and I love it.